A fleet of Royal Navy vessels, including 4 warships, set sail this morning for the Mediterranean, docking at Gibraltar within a week. It comes amid growing tensions with Spain over access to the British overseas territory. The underlying dispute has gone on for centuries, but this most recent spat erupted last month after Gibraltar dropped concrete blocks into disputed waters to create an artificial reef. Shortly afterwards, Spain toughened up their border checks at the border with Gibraltar, causing long traffic queues. That's since stopped, but most recently Spain's foreign minister has suggested introducing a £40 fee to cross the border and even closing Spain's airspace to flights heading to Gibraltar. Well, our correspondent Duncan Kennedy is in Portsmouth, from where some of the ships at least will be setting off later on. And Duncan, it's the timing of this that looks slightly odd.
It does. This is being played down by the governments of both countries, Britain and Spain, but so far as the Gibraltarians are concerned, the timing couldn't be better because they feel as though they're being bullied by Spain on this matter of the reef versus the fishing rights. Now, the British and Spanish governments are both saying, look, this is a pre-planned exercise involving 10 ships. HMS Illustrious will be leaving from here in the next couple of hours, and HMS Dauntless later on this afternoon. Some other ships going from Plymouth, a flotilla of 10 ships sailing to the Med, onto the Red Sea, on into the Gulf. It's a pre-planned exercise. It's one of 3. They've done it last year and the year before. Both sides saying no particular significance so far as the Gibraltarian row is concerned. But it's the authorities in Gibraltar who are saying no. When one frigate, HMS Westminster, plus a couple of auxiliary British ships pull in there in about a week's time, this will be a show of the British flag, a message, a political message to the Spanish government that Britain still very much supports Gibraltar, just as it's done since the Utrecht Treaty was signed in 1713, and will continue to support Britain despite what the Gibraltarians call these provocations by the Spanish government.
So 2 ways of looking at this, and of course where you are will have memories for many people of a certain task force heading off in the early 80s, and that's now being drawn into this as well.
Very much so. It depends where you're coming at this from, Simon, what kind of political message you want to put on this. In fact, HMS Illustrious was just commissioned in time for the Falklands War. So this particular vessel, the helicopter carrier, has very deep significance for many people. But at the governmental level, the British and the Spanish governmental level, they're saying no, you've got to look back and row back from this. This exercise was planned many months ago. It takes place every year. They're not saying that for the Gibraltarians there's no significance, but for the governments at Spanish and British government level, they're saying this is a routine thing. They want to play it down, in other words, and don't want to ratchet up the tensions which are already in place because of this row over the reef. And just one other complicating factor that arose over the weekend, certainly according to the El País newspaper, is that the Spanish may be talking to the Argentinians about presenting a united front at the United Nations to get the issue not only of Gibraltar raised, but also the issue of the Falklands. Now, none of that has been confirmed by the Spanish government. It's just a newspaper article at the moment. But it's one more sign of how the tensions about Gibraltar, and potentially the Falklands as well, have arisen in the past few weeks, just as they've done down the centuries since 1713, and have yet to be resolved at a full political level. For the Gibraltarians, this whole naval visit, if you like, is seen as much more significant than at least publicly being displayed by the British and the Spanish governments.
Duncan, thank you very much for that. Duncan Kennedy in Portsmouth. Well, let's go to Spain, to Barcelona. Our correspondent there is Tom Burridge. So, Spain and Argentina locking sights on the UK. Really?
Well, it's a good question, and I think what we have to look at is the difference between rhetoric and substance in this, Simon. And, you know, there is a lot of things being said off the record, and there's a big difference between what is actually said on the record. For example, in El País newspaper over the weekend, probably Spain's most credible newspaper, one of the most read ones here, essentially quoting diplomatic sources at Spain's foreign ministry, saying that a meeting between Spain's foreign minister and Argentina's foreign minister next month about Spain's bid for the 2020 Olympic Games, they'll use that, according to these diplomatic sources quoted in this newspaper, to raise the issue of Gibraltar and possibly to create, as Duncan was saying there, some kind of common front with Argentina over the Falkland Islands and Gibraltar. But then you compare that with an interview on the record by the Spanish foreign minister on the state broadcaster here in Spain, in which the Spanish foreign minister struck a much more conciliatory tone. He said that he's willing, ready to sit down with Britain in bilateral talks or four-way talks between Gibraltar, Britain, Spain and the regional government of Andalusia down in the southern tip of Spain. And also on that border, the possibility of a charge for crossing the border between southern Spain and Gibraltar, he backtracked to a certain extent on that and said that he would not punish any of the workers of any nationality crossing that border. So not ruling it out, but saying that actually if there were a charge, it would not affect any of the thousands of workers who cross from southern Spain into Gibraltar.
Tom, thank you very much. Tom Burke there in Barcelona.